said, "Hey, we're doing this over here at Suburban. You ought to do it here too." And he said, "Well, I don't know what we can do. We're a much smaller club." That I said, "I don't care. Dollar's a dollar." So we started another club, and there are a lot of clubs now in central New Jersey that are all participant in the Folds of Honor. I mean, it's a great, really, it's a great program.
That is amazing. Our next guest is going to be getting a hold of us here in just a few seconds. But IQ Rizzoli, what did you think of everything that was just addressed?
What Don Perkins is doing, and this gentleman John, is way beyond what most people can do. I mean, this is unbelievable. I mean, they really are helping people, not just talking about it. Our governors, that is the State Department and Biden, they talk the talk, but never walk the walk.
Yes, very much so.
And on top of that, they waste hundreds of billions of dollars, wasted left, right, and center. It's frightening. It really is frightening. To pay $300 million to the Palestinians to build underground tunnels under hospitals, and you have Americans in the street with poor. Mind blows my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, but it blows my mind.
It is just an incredible deal. Just I just don't even know what to say with the fact that what these guys are doing, and I just find it amazing that the United States, we still have to help the veterans. Why can't the government do it? They'll send these people over to get their arms blown off and everything, and then when they come back, they're like, Why is that, Dan?
I've asked that question a long time, and it still makes no sense to me. I mean, I've talked to people in the Department of Defense and in Washington about we had doctors, psychiatrist doctors who work with us in creating the music system for our MP3 player, which is not really music, but it's a series of sounds that sounds a little bit like music, but are designed at different frequencies to help stimulate the REM response so that people can get to sleep.
Yeah.
And when I went to the VA when we first started, and they said, well, nice, but there's no evidence that music deals with sleep deprivation. And I said, well, I think I don't agree with you. And about a year and a half later, the VA issues a study that says music can in fact be a great therapy for people suffering from PTSD. And I felt like I wanted to pick up the phone and call them and you know what, and say, but I didn't. I bit my tongue. But it's just, the problem, Jim, is not just with the VA. The problem is representational of what's going on in Washington. We have people in bureaucratic positions who think they know better than the people who are dealing with the problems on a day-to-day basis. And they decide we're not going to do that, and we don't do it. So we have to go to the private sector to get money to fund the various organizations to take care of veterans. So it's still crazy, and it's just very frustrating for me, and I'm sure it is for other people. But there's a lot of people who care a lot about veterans and are doing whatever they can to improve the quality of life that they have.
Yeah.
How's our guests coming?
I am waiting on them to pop in here. While we wait on them, Dan suggest a topic here, and we'll go with that until we have our guest pop in here.
Well, I'm going to tell you that I just sent to IQ the transcription, the production of a show that he did with me on Saturday. I don't even know whether he's looked at his email.
I,
We did.
I listened to it, by the way.
You've already listened to it?
Yes, your voice was perfect. My voice was shit. But I have something to tell you. On Saturday, I have an engineer who will come and check my computer, and maybe save the day.
Well, I thought it compared to what we had 2 weeks ago, that was shit 2 weeks ago. I could understand you in this one, but it was a really I think it was a wonderful interview. We talked about what's going on in the Middle East, and as you can imagine, James.
Don't misunderstand. The interview was excellent. The production was garbage. Not your side, my side. No.
Well,
honestly, the interview was amazing. We covered a huge amount of information, and you allowed me a lot of time. I appreciate it.
Well, it was very insightful. Like there's some great lines in there. There is no God in Allah, in Muslim, in Islam. There is no God, and it was just a wide-ranging interview talking about how the Hamas is using the Palestinian people as shields and don't care about whether they kill them or not. And but it was terrific, and I'm glad we did it again. I don't know what's going on in his system because he claims when he talks to other show hosts, he's perfectly clear. But I did some things, and I think we got a respectable show. So we'll put it out sometime this week for IQ. But it was a worthwhile interview.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So
You should give it to James because he will put it on his website.
yes, yeah, send it
Yeah,
over.
please.
I'll
He's always
put it on the
publishing
website.
everything I do.
I'll run it wherever we can. So
Okay.
so Dan,
Yes, sir.
I don't know what the hell's going on with our guests, so we're just gonna go with this. I spoke with Robert Daubie earlier today, and speaking of our guest, there is our guest. Let's do this. I'm going to put him on hold. I'm going to put you guys on hold. I'm going to take a commercial break, and we are going to come back. Welcome back to our big broadcast. We are live, coast to coast, bowler to bowler on iHeartRadio today. Peyton, go ahead and tell us a little bit about your book, my friend.
Well, I wrote the book because I saw what was happening with Trump, and I was a big Trump supporter. I couldn't understand my family at all. They seem to hate his guts for some reason, and I think the media, they're buying into all what the media's been talking about. And I was involved in a cult for 5 years back in the 70s, one of these new age cults.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of similarities between what happened in the cult and what's happening in the media today. It's just that people seem to let other people, like the authority, speak for them and take over their thought patterns. You know, they're just too busy working their lives and stuff. And that was me in 5 years in the cult. And I see a lot of similarities. People aren't thinking clearly, and it's getting so ridiculous now. It's unbelievable what people are thinking. But yeah, I got into the cult originally. My brother passed away. He had a motorcycle accident. He was 19. So I went out to, we had a house in the country, my family house. It was just a 2-acre lot around farms. And I remember going out and looking at the stars and praying, and I didn't know what to pray for. So I just prayed for some answers as to where he was, and give me some answers, God, please. I was really brokenhearted. So the next day I went to work, and this guy told me about this meeting that was going on. It was a meeting for the cult, pretty much. So I went to the meeting, and honestly, it was 5 years of hell. They sort of take away your identity. They have they fish you in, but anyway, it was 5 years of hell. But I don't think I'd change it for anything, because I learned a lot about courage, about standing up to the crowd. Not many people do, and it was looking back, a great learning experience, and that's how I got into it.
So Dan,
yeah,
I know you probably got some
Is the
questions.
book about that experience?
I have one chapter describing that experience, and to be honest, it took me on a path of real spirituality, because they taught you how to meditate really deeply. And meditation to me is just intense prayer. And I started to do it in my own room, on my own. Sorry?
No, go ahead, my friend. Go ahead.
Okay, so I started to do really intense prayer on my own, and I started to have visions. I remember in the cult we were doing some psychic healing, what they said was psychic healing, and I remember one incident. This guy. So we were supposed to bring in names of people that we knew were sick, and the other people were supposed to figure out without them telling him what was wrong with them, right? So when you do stuff like that, you think you're just imagining it. But anyway, I was deep in meditation, and this guy was telling me, guiding me along, and he described the name of the person that I didn't know, the age, and where they lived, and that's all you get. So I was meditating on this guy, and all of a sudden in my mind, I could clearly see a skull with a metal piece of metal in it, like a metal egg coming out of his head. Didn't make any sense to me. So I hesitated, and the guy said, well, what is it? I said, no, it's nothing. He said, no, you see something. What is it? I said, well, it looks like a metal egg in the guy's head. It doesn't make any sense to me. And apparently the guy was in the Second World War, and he had a metal plate in his head. And I saw it clearly. And I say that because I know so many people are skeptical about stuff like that. And I was too. And I wish I could reproduce it. But I've had some other experiences. When my mother died, I remember hearing her voice. And we never really saw eye to eye, but I remember her voice. It sort of said, I love it here. And I didn't hear it, and I didn't feel it. It was something altogether different, sort of a little bit of both of those things. But all of a sudden, this wave of knowledge came over to me as to where she was. And I felt her utter happiness, like completely free of guilt and the problems of the world. I could feel it all over it. It was like she was a little girl again. And I made peace with my mother right then and there. It was incredible. So that's where that prayer led me. And it all started with the cult teaching me how to do intense meditation. But I mean, I also learned a lot about human nature and the way the way people let themselves be controlled because they're lazy with their thoughts. And when you see it spiraling out of control, not that many people have the courage to stand up to the crowd. And I think that's what's happened. As far as Trump goes, Trump is, you guys know the parable of the emperor has no clothes, right? You've heard of that? You've heard of that? Okay. So the tailors go in and they make up this story that they're making this beautiful wardrobe for the emperor. Anyway, he ends up going down the street on his horse with no clothes, and one kid in the crowd, some mother's kid, says, "Why isn't the emperor wearing any clothes?" So that's Trump. That's Trump. He's pointing out all this stuff to the world, that there's a lot of BS out there. A lot of things aren't right. And I think in real life, I mean, in the parable, everybody sort of turns up to the kid and says, wow, you know what? Yeah, the kid's right. He's not wearing any clothes. And then the jig was kind of up, right? But in real life, I think there's three kinds of people. that would react to that kid or Trump. There's the people that have an open mind and start to look at the facts, and they start to see there is something really wrong here with this whole system. And they start to dig, and they start to open their eyes, and they see what's really happening. The next kind of person is the people that are invested in the lie. They don't want to give up what they believe in, their ego, whatever. And they'll fight Trump. They'll turn on him, and that's why they hate him so much, because he's questioning their reality, and they don't want to admit they're wrong. They don't want to change their whole life, their whole thinking about the system, and that's where a lot of people are. But the third group is, I think it's just pure evil. Those are the tailors. They know what's going on. They're manipulating it for their own benefit, and that's where we are. I think there's some really evil people out there.
Can you be so bold as to explain to us somebody who's in that last category?
You want me to get into politics, right? U.S. politics. I don't think my Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, is in that. I think he's just too dumb. He's easily led. I think Hillary Clinton. I don't think Joe Biden is. He's being led.
He's too dumb.
Yeah, he's just not with it, and he's like a puppet. But I think there are people that are manipulating the system. I don't know much about George Soros, but I think he's one of them. The Chinese disinformation, this whole thing about climate change. You have to look at where's the money, like who benefits from this. China's influencing all kinds of politics in the U.S. and they want to be the world superpower, and you take the U.S. off its own energy and start buying it and doing these windmills and all this other stuff. It's a recipe for disaster, and it's going to bring the country to its knees, and it's pretty much doing it. And they're the ones that benefit from it, and they're pushing it through misinformation, paying people off. There's a lot of money changing hands, like $5 million to Hunter Biden distributed throughout the family. The Ukraine deal, there's just so much corruption, and China's the one. They're actually building more coal plants. They don't care about climate change. They know it's a crock.
They're building a new coal-powered plant every week.
Yeah.
Every week.
And you don't hear about it. Why? Yeah. Like, it's easy enough to verify, but
China and their neighbor, India, account for about 35% of all of the CO2 emissions in the world.
But isn't that so obvious? So obvious. There's bank records, all kinds of stuff, money flowing from China, money flowing from the Ukraine into the Bidens. And look at his policy. I mean, if you tried to bring the states down, you couldn't think of more than what this guy's actually doing. So he's being manipulated. He's being controlled by outside forces. That's the problem with an open society. Years ago, there was a guy in my book, I mentioned this guy, Yuri Bezmenov. He was a Russian defector in the 80s, I think. And he was a misinformation specialist with the KGB. And he came over to the West and he warned the West about our open society and the infiltration. Like, you can't have a nuclear war with the US and Russia. They know that. And what's the best way to defeat the US is from within. So they're in the schools, of course, they're in the universities. Universities are pumping out idiots. They don't know their geography, they don't know proper English, but they know wokeism, they know all this ridiculous stuff. It's helping China. It's going against everything that I was brought up with and what I believe in, and that's what kids, they're brainwashed. I hate to say brainwashed, it sounds like such a weird term, but I don't know what else to call it. They're in a cult. They're feeding getting fed this information, and they believe it. So that's in a nutshell my book. But a lot of the book, to keep it light, it was politics and the cult. To keep it light, I began every chapter with a story of my childhood brought up when I was a kid. I mean, I remember when I was 15, I went to a gun store and bought a Lee Enfield 303 with armor-piercing bullets, copper tip bullets, and the guy just handed it over. I think it was $100 or $50 or something.
Mhm.
And I was brought up with guns, and I knew exactly what the gun was doing. I knew after if I missed a target where the bullet was going to end up. Always, I kind of just taught myself. But now, yeah, it's they're disarming the whole U.S. or trying to. Anyway, that's a whole new topic, a whole different.
Do you
topic.
still have your gun?
No, are you kidding? It's Canada. Yeah, it's Canada. First thing I did, I spent some time in a communist country, or I shouldn't say communist. It's not really communist. It's more like a dictatorship now, Nicaragua. I've got a friend down there that's from there, and first thing we did was we used his license to buy myself a handgun for protection, and yeah, I had a handgun down there, but I felt more free in a communist country than I do in Canada right now. I mean, I'd go to.
Why do you say that?
Well, I had a gun, and for protection, they don't check. I'd go to a bank, for instance, and the police would be outside with their shotguns, and they'd say, "Do you have any weapons?" Yes. So I'd hand them my gun. Thank you, sir. They'd put it in a box. When I came out of the bank, they handed it back. No questions asked. Thank you, sir. It just felt you could speak your mind. Now you can't say certain things. The control is almost absolute in North America now. I guess you guys know that as well. You can't say certain things.
How long's the book been out?
Quite a while. I wrote it before Trump lost the election in 2020. I was sure he would win. Actually, I'm sure he did win.
He did win.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
He did win.
I would have bet $1 million. I would have bet $1 million that he won,
Yeah.
but I was shocked when he didn't. And now you're seeing why. You know, they have all this evidence of stuffing ballots, all this other stuff. The media completely ignores it. And going back to this guy Bezmenov, the money's in the media, the money's in the schools, the money's in all this misinformation piling into our system. And this guy Bezmenov said he couldn't believe how successful it was after one generation. He said he couldn't believe it when he got here. The attitude of kids coming out, the breakdown of the nuclear family. Yeah. So
Where's it going?
Where's the system going?
Yeah. Can it survive under its own weight?
I have hope. I mean, I sincerely believe that we're living in this isn't real. This is, I believe, really strong in God and where we're heading after we die. I think I have a lot of faith, and I think that it will turn out okay. Believe it or not, I think one of the strongest things for freedom is Bitcoin. What's happening with Bitcoin? I don't know if you guys know much about it, but I mean, the U.S. Constitution is a brilliant document, but the problem is it's controlled by people, right? So if the people in charge want to ignore the Constitution, there's not much you can do, you know. And they're breaking the law, but they're the ones in charge. They're in charge of the FBI. They're in charge of the government, pretty much, the courts to a point. So Bitcoin comes along. You take away the money. You take away the money from the government. You take away the power. And Bitcoin, for the first time in history, is self-custody, money that's actually self-custody, and it's actually digital gold. It's a fascinating thing, and I think the SEC is going to approve a spot Bitcoin very soon, and I think you're going to see it explode because it represents freedom better than. Actually better than the Constitution. It lives up to the ideals of the Constitution. It gives the power back to the actual people. And there's nothing the government can do to control it. It's a fixed supply. So it's the first time in history that something has a fixed supply that you can't add more to it. Like the US dollar, they run out of money, they just print more from nothing. It used to be on the gold standard, but 71 they took it off. Bitcoin's
that's
got a
long
very
gone.
fixed supply. What's that?
Gold standard. That's long gone. The New World Order
Yeah,
has all the gold in
yeah,
some
it's long
vault
gone.
somewhere.
So they just they're in charge of the money, and they're printing as much as they want for whatever they want, and the guys at the bottom are getting screwed with inflation. And yeah, Bitcoin is something that's inflation proof because as the years go by, every 4 years there's a halving, so the supply's cut in half, and I think in 100 years there won't be any left, and you can't make any more. And I mean, when you think about it, our money's all digital now. Like you don't, when you get a mortgage, you don't get the cash. It's all digital. They don't print up that money. It's digital now. It's just controlled by the government right now. So that's the difference.
I have a gentleman I met recently who was bringing in the winter after the first of the year. He's going to be introducing the first Bitcoin backed by gold reserves in the ground.
Bitcoin backed by gold reserves. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, but people can't get their head around something that doesn't really exist. But the thing is, right now, money doesn't exist. The money we use doesn't exist. The money for our mortgages, it's all in the computers anyway. And the banks buy the U.S. bonds. The U.S. government prints it. The banks buy it. It's not real now, you know. And we're all headed to this digitization of the world. So I think gold's gonna fall by the wayside eventually. I mean, for 5,000 years, it was the best money because there wasn't much of it, and the U.S. used to have it on Fort Knox. The wealth of the U.S. was based on the gold in the Fort Knox, but nobody ever audited it. Nobody really knew what was there. Bitcoin, everybody knows it's on an open source ledger that the whole world can see, and there's no playing with it. And nobody can create more of it without doing the work. They have to actually mine it through their computers. And it's very, very complicated, but the more you get into it, the more you see, wow, this is going to change the world. I hope. But yeah, Trudeau, during the truckers' strike, truckers' protest, he cut off some of the bank accounts of people that even donated to it. It's criminal. You know,
But he got away with it.
there was a woman in Vancouver. She's a single mom. She donated $50 or something, struggling to get by. And because she donated it, they cut her bank account. She couldn't pay her rent. She couldn't buy food for her kids. What gives these assholes this power? You know, that's a dictatorship, as far as I'm concerned.
It's
crazy.
the deep
we should
state.
do to a dictator? Shoot him.
IQ's solution is always revolution, violence, and shooting people. That is always IQ's.
The only way to have your freedom is
Well,
to
you know what?
destroy the one who is enslaved.
You know what? There's
Not
a lot of people.
To
Yeah, there's-
destroy.
Sorry, I can hardly hear you.
Go ahead, my friend. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I used to think, I couldn't even say this out loud. I used to think the only way to get out of this is a revolution, armed revolution.
IQ says that every week and has said
That's
that
what
for
I
the
say all
last
the
52
time,
weeks.
Peyton.
But I'll tell you,
Exactly what I have been saying for years.
I'll tell you, I think Bitcoin is the answer, because you take the money away from these people, and you take the power away. And I think when the spot Bitcoin comes out, it should be out late this year or early next year. Then BlackRock, Fidelity, they're all going to start selling it. Yeah.
Peyton, the way you talk and the subject you talk is music to my ear. The subject, you, Dan, myself, and James are a minority.
That's true.
I wish you guys would look into Bitcoin, because it's an alternative to armed violence. And I mean, my dad fought in the Second World War against Nazis. These are Nazis.
God,
They're the
yes,
same-
every
the
single
same
one of
mindset.
them.
Yeah,
but
Right,
Peyton,
left, in the middle. They're all New
let me-
World Order Nazis. Go ahead, Dan.
and they're accusing Trump of being a Nazi. Listen. My sister's a liberal. I hope she doesn't listen to this. But I remember driving 2 years ago. I remember driving back from dinner in Toronto with her, and She just got back from Poland to see one of the concentration camps from the Second World War, and I said, "Wow, that must have been pretty intense." And she said, "Yeah, that's what scares me about Trump." I'm going, "What? What the hell are you talking about?"
Exactly.
This guy's pointing out the flaws in the system, and I mean, they're stopping free speech. They're sending armed FBI agents to people that aren't a physical threat, locking them up. Look what happened to January 6th. This is terrible. This is a really dark spot in American history, what they did to those people on January 6th. You know, it's ridiculous. And then they set up kangaroo courts. This is what communists do. This is what Nazis do. And to be honest, I don't think there's a difference between left wing and right wing extremes. They're all the same. When you think of right wing, I think of Nazis in Germany, right? Everybody thinks, oh, that's the ultimate right wing, these Nazis, right? And the ultimate left wing is communism. But they're the same damn thing.
But
As a matter of fact, Mussolini was a communist, or his top guys were communists. They named the Nazi Party the National Socialist Party. All it is going back to the cult. It's top-down control of people's minds and government control. And people either get along with that or they get wiped out. There's no freedom. There's no freedom of thought. And they're both the same animal as far as I'm concerned. I hate this left-wing, right-wing talk. It's all bullshit just to confuse people.
Yes.
Just to confuse them, like, oh, so you're a Nazi, so they can shut you down. You're a Nazi is everything you say now. Oh, you're a Trump supporter, you're a Nazi. It's all tricks. It's all mind games.
It's all tricks. It's
But
all shenanigans.
with all due respect, Nazi means the National Socialist Labor Workers Party, which is leftist, not right wing. National Socialist Workers Party. So they are the same. They're not opposite. They are exactly the same.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
But, I mean, even the name says it. It's right. The German National Socialist Workers Party. Full stop.
Isn't that something?
Well, as we wrap up here, let's start with IQ Rizzoli. IQ, how do we get your books and get involved with what you're doing online, my friend?
Right. My books are called Lifting the Veil, The True Faces of Muhammad and Islam. It's on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Peyton, it was a pleasure listening to you.
So, Dan,
yes, sir.
how do we get involved with your stuff and everything?
Okay. I have a new book coming out a week from today, Sad Eyes. It's a historical romance novel. I'm very proud of it. We're continuing to do a lot of things in terms of content on our radio and television shows, and writing content, and we have some new interesting things that we're going to be doing that we'll talk to you about later, but they're going to be really interesting. So, no rest for the wicked or Republicans.
I'd like to read that book, actually.
Thank you. Well, you could be able to get it on Amazon on a week from today.
What's the name of it again? It's a historical romance.
Sad Eyes. Sad Eyes.
Okay.
It's a story about a young woman who's born in Waterloo, Iowa in 1912. In her sophomore year of high school, she decides she wants to become an ER nurse, and she has to leave Waterloo to get out, and she goes to Chicago, and West Side, where all the gangsters come into the emergency room, and she gets recruited by the FBI to be a spy, and she can only do it so much, and she's just driving her nuts. And so she decides to leave Chicago and goes to San Diego, California, gets a job at a hospital as a charge nurse, and then she joins the Women's Nurse Corps and meets a young man who's a fighter pilot in training, and he gets sent off, and she gets sent to Honolulu, Hawaii, and they get married on the 28th of November, 1941, and they're having their honeymoon on the beaches of Waikiki when the bombers start crossing over the island.
Wow, holy cow! That's a fiction, right? It's totally fiction.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That sounds very good. So I wrote it down. So Amazon.
Yep. Sad Eyes.
It's funny. I wanted to write another book, not politics, about kind of the mafia. I don't know if I should get into this, but I was involved in the mafia a little bit.
You were involved in the mafia?
Yeah. So a long story. They came into my life, and I managed to get out of it in one piece. But I want to start off fiction, but based on that, and based a little bit on my time in Nicaragua. And I want to make it like a romantic adventure rescue story. So yeah, it's going to be fun. Writing's fun.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoy I hope you enjoy the book.
Yeah, I got to get this. I wrote it down here. Sad Eyes.
That is awesome. So Peyton, before we let you go, how do we get your book and everything?
It's My Family, Occult, and Trump, and it's on Amazon, and it's also on the website of Austin Macaulay. They're the publishers, so it's on their website as well. And that's it. I don't have I'm 71. I don't have any social media, nothing like that. It's too complicated for me.
Well, Peyton, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to chatting with you soon. Dan Perkins Media, and of course the fantastic IQ Rizzoli. And next week we are going to do something. But before I let everybody go, I've got to. Yes, this is next week. Dr. Nuruddin is going to be with us, and he will be with us for the full hour, because for the first 30 minutes, it will be him and IQ Rizzoli debating Islam. And then the next 30 minutes, the second half of the show will be Dan, IQ, and me talking to the doctor about his health book. So it's going to be a wild ride next Tuesday. Happy Thanksgiving week, everybody.
I'm telling you, I love you guys, man. I love what you're doing. You guys are awesome. It's so nice to talk to people like that have some common sense. And
don't let that get around. That'll ruin your reputation, sir. But but Peyton,
right.
Thanks for doing this, baby. We really enjoyed it. Dan, I will see you next week. And IQ, I will talk to you on Thursday.
Thanks so much, guys.
And
Take it easy.
that is that. That wraps it up here for this edition of our Big